Irving Kristol told you a couple of years ago, or a lot of years ago, that if you, the worst thing about running for office is that you might get elected.
Oh, absolutely, and he was absolutely right.
Did you, how much did you think about running?
I thought about it only until I talked with the first professionals. I mean, Senator Hayakawa wanted me to run for the Senate in California. And out of respect for him, I agreed. I thought it never crossed my mind before or since. But out of respect for him, I talked to political professionals. And these people would talk to me about 2 minutes, and they would say, you're not what politicians are made of. My late sister, who probably knew me better than anyone in the world, said, Tommy, I can't even imagine you in politics. Can't even imagine. And once, and my wife was telling a friend, Tom wouldn't last 20 minutes in Washington. And he said, oh, yes, he would. No, I'm not saying he'd last an hour. You know?
Why?
Because I say what I mean, and that doesn't help you a lot in politics. You know, they tried to get me to become a Secretary of Labor when Reagan came. There were people who were pushing that, and I told the guy, stop pushing it, you know. I said, you know, the President of the United States has better things to do than having to run around all the time saying, well, what Tom really meant was, you know, after I make some statement.
What kind of person then goes into politics?
I don't really know. I just don't know. It has to be someone who's either enormously dedicated or who is enormously concerned with power, prominence, and those kinds of things.
Talk about saying what you think. I just picked this up. You do. How often do you do the random thoughts columns?
Well, I collect them over a period of time. When I have enough for a column, I publish it.
Not too many days ago, you wrote the following: Teresa Heinz Kerry's latest loony statement that pro-Bush hackers could have gotten into the electronic voting machines during last year's election gave me my first misgivings about having criticized her. She may not be playing with a full deck.
Yes. I just can't imagine. This is one of a whole series of things she said that makes you wonder. At first, I simply criticized, and then I wondered, my gosh, maybe she really doesn't have it all.
How far can you go in today's column writing business when you're writing about people like this, the wife of a candidate?
I don't know. I really don't give it a lot of thought.
You say what you want to say?
Yeah.
Editors ever correct you?
Oh, when I have something factually wrong, yes. I mean, I even printed a factual correction last year for the first time. But that's really not a big problem.
For the first time?
Yes.
Ever?
Yeah.
Factual correction?
Yeah.
What was it?
I had quoted some organization as having lamented poaching in Kenya. And they hadn't lamented poaching in Kenya, but I thought, lamenting poaching is surely not liable. But they wanted to make an issue of it. They didn't, and they were right on that one point, being wrong on everything else. I sent that correction in.
When we last talked on Book Notes in 1990, you had written something like 14 books, and in the interim period, you've almost written that many again.
Probably. I haven't kept track.
It's over 30.
Really?
How do you go about, and I know you got another one coming out in a few days, how do you go about staying on a schedule and writing as many books as you have?
Actually, I don't stay on a schedule. I write when I have something to say. And that can be, for example, the book Basic Economics that I wrote, that took shape over a period of a decade. I wasn't even sure when it would be finished. But as I would see things written on TV that were actually just so wrong economically, I would then sit down and write something explaining this thing in plain language. And over the years, the stuff would just collect in the computer. And after, half a dozen or so years, I began to see, we have almost enough here for a book. And then I began to organize it and turn it into a book. So I only write, and so I normally will have 2 or 3 things going at one time. I have no idea which one will ever get finished at all, because there's some that will never get finished, and much less which one's going to come out first. So right now, for example, I have one book coming out in a few weeks that you mentioned. I have another one in press with Yale University Press on a totally different subject, essays on classical economics. What's a day like then for you? I have great freedom, since I don't have classes to teach, I don't have any things any people to meet. If on a given day I may do a lot, or I may do nothing at all. I mean, I can remember once I was sitting here, and I said, you know, I haven't been to Yosemite in a while. I just got out of the car and got in the car and drove to Yosemite and stayed the rest of the week.
But how many columns a week do you have to write?
I'm only, my contract calls for one a week. I usually write more than one. I don't get paid any more for the extra ones. If I'm truly, you know, frothing at the mouth, I'll write maybe 3 or 4.
How long does it take you to write a 750-word column?
Again, it's hard to say because I have a whole bunch of them that are half written, and again, that will probably never be completely written. And sometimes something will happen in the news that will just jog me, and I'll sit down and do it in a couple of hours. Another time, it'll just take, well, the random thoughts column can last, you know, it could be a couple of months before I collect enough for one of those. So you know, it's just very fluid.
One of the things that's changed, a big change since we last talked, is the internet. And I noticed that on townhall.com, you can read every Thomas Sowell column since 2000. Yes. What impact does that have on you? How has that changed, again, the relationship with you and your readers?
Not that I know of.
Do more people read you now than they used to?
I'm in more papers than I was, say, 10 years ago.
But what about the internet? Do you get, how much feedback do you get?
Oh, lots of feedback from the internet. Lots of feedback from the internet.
How would you say the internet traffic relates to the newspaper reading traffic? Do you get any sense?
It's hard to know. Sometimes they'll just write me about a particular column and they won't say where they read it. So I have no idea where they got it from the internet or from the newspaper. But in terms of mail, certainly the emails vastly exceed the postal mail that I get.
How many emails do you get on an ongoing basis, and do you answer them?
Hundreds a week, and I can't answer them all. I'm just really sorry that I can't, because some of them really deserve an answer. If I can do 10% of them, I consider I've had a good day.
How many do you read?
I read most of them. Sometimes some of these people write in and they'll say something in the first paragraph that makes you realize this, you know, this is not worth going any further with, and you just hit the delete button and keep moving.
What's your impression of the internet and its impact on the society?
Oh, I think it's opened up a lot of things. It's made it harder, I guess, for a totalitarian country to seal its people off from the outside world, and that can only be a good thing.
You wrote in one of your Random Thoughts columns, one sign of the Democrats' desperation is that some of them continue to try to tar the Bush administration with innuendos of racism, even though its cabinet members have included people of Hispanic, Japanese, American, Jewish, and Chinese American ancestry, as well as 2 conservative black secretaries of state.
2 consecutive.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yes. Well, it does seem a little ridiculous, but it also shows how desperate they are. The Democrats get something like 80 to 90% of the black vote. If that ever falls down to 60 or 70%, they're in deep trouble because they've alienated so many other people that they have a hard time winning elections at all. And so therefore they must try to keep blacks paranoid. I think of this thing about, remember the dragging death in Texas some years ago, and they used that against Bush because Bush was against hate crimes legislation. And the fact is that these 2 guys who did this were electrocuted. So whether it was a hate crime or not a hate crime, they're dead. And calling it a hate crime would have changed absolutely nothing. What it would have done was open up the courts to all kinds of litigation, because the guy is convicted of a hate crime and his lawyer would say, well, it really wasn't really a hate crime, and they can go through the whole Circuit Court of Appeals and so forth. And so to me, I agree entirely with Bush on this particular point, that it doesn't matter what your motivation was. If you did it, you should pay the price.
Why do so many blacks follow the Democratic Party then?
Inertia. Don't forget the Solid South party that followed the Democratic Party for over a century. So blacks have been into this, what, 60-some years now. I'm hoping that blacks will wake up faster than the Solid South did. But these things go, the Jewish vote has gone Democratic by overwhelming majority, and it's hard to see why, given the policies and so on. But once this inertia gets going, it'll keep going for a long time.